In the world of firefighting and public safety, reliability is key. That's why for over 2 decades, first responders nationwide have trusted the Fire Store as their go-to source for essential equipment, apparel, and accessories. From top-of-the-line firefighting gear like helmets, boots, and thermal imaging cameras, the Fire Store has it all, tailored to the specific needs of our heroes on the front lines. But they don't stop there. Their extensive selection also includes EMS supplies, safety apparel like flame-resistant clothing and high-visibility gear, as well as a wide array of tools, from hand tools to vehicle extrication tools, supporting public safety professionals in their duties. Partnered with industry leaders, the Fire Store's commitment to quality and excellence is unmatched, because when it comes to protecting communities, there's no room for compromise. Join the thousands of first responders who rely on the Fire Store. Visit thefirestore.com online or in store today. The Fire Store, your reliable partner for fire and public safety equipment. Hi, Chris McClune here with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment. Welcome to this edition of our podcast. Today, my guest is Kevin Shea, and we're in a little different environment, a little different background behind us. We're in Indianapolis. We're getting ready for FDIC, and while this room is pretty quiet right now, it'll be a whole different scene come tomorrow. There'll be a ton of activity here, and the buzz around FDIC will officially get started as firefighters start arriving, as speakers start arriving. And that's actually some of what Kevin is responsible for here, is getting all of, basically setting it up so everybody knows where to go almost, getting with the signage and all that kind of stuff. He runs the classroom team. But the reason I wanted to talk to him today was Kevin, and I'm going to ask him to explain a little more about his background in a minute. He's a retired lieutenant from the FDNY. He spent a bit of his career on Rescue 1. He has stayed, even though he's retired from FDNY, he stayed abreast of all the latest rescue techniques. He is still a trainer of technical rescue, and that's what I wanted to talk to him about today. We're rolling into FDIC here, Kevin. Yes. We're going to see a ton of equipment, a ton of new stuff, and there is a lot. And I find this, in my own my own background. 30 years ago when I first joined the fire service, and I'm sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit here, but yes. 30 years ago when I joined the fire service, we still did a lot of stuff. I don't know if the right term would be manually, but there is a lot of equipment out there today that helps us be more efficient on the fire ground because it's taking a lot of the guesswork out for us. The units themselves, but also the way we carry it. A lot of it is pre-rigged. I'm sure back when you were at FDNY, you guys were more advanced than that than a lot of places just by virtue of the type of responses that you have. But before we get started with all of that, for those who may not know who you are, who aren't familiar with your background, let's just introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about you.
My name is Kevin, and thanks, Chris. Good to see you again. Yeah. We've been doing this a long time.
Longer than we think sometimes.
Oh, dang, brother. Beats the alternative. I'm happy to still be here. Retired from FDNY earlier than I had wanted to. I had an accident, had a fire, and had to go eventually. And miss it terribly. So I never left the field. I have a couple of hats. I still do the technical rescue training. Back in the day, back in the early 90s, while I was still active with FDNY, I worked for ROCO for a while, based in Baton Rouge. And then after I retired, I went to work for Spec Rescue. I was with them for quite a while. And then moved to Montana, started my own small company. In addition to that, was a manufacturer's rep for Scott and Lion and now Perimeter Solutions. And you just, when you leave the fire service before you want to, it's like it leaves a hole in your heart. You just keep trying to fill it. But the reason for more technical rescue than firefighting is I think that you should well, be a student of the job, as they say, constantly, forever. At the same time, for myself, I don't feel comfortable teaching something if I'm not still doing it.
Absolutely.
So I enjoy firefighting more than the technical rescue, but it's been a long time since I actually fought fires. And although some of the training props are excellent, they've really come a long way. For myself, there's certain things that you need an experienced firefighter there to teach it. For example, if I'm crawling down one of these containers that they've turned into a firefighting unit, they've done a great job. The smoke machines are better than they ever were. You know, the heat, it can get hot. They can shut that heat down like that in an emergency, so it's safer. And I can take a kid and keep telling that guy or that girl, you know, check the floor before you go further, or make sure the ceiling is intact, or whatever. And you're saying these things, but you know that the floor in this container is never going to give way, right? So it's almost like you go through the motion, okay, tap the floor and then go. But we operate like we practice. And in the back of my mind, I know that if I'm not really concerned about the floor giving way, one example, I'm not going to be as sharp as if I was on top of that all the time. So how do you stay sharp? You stay sharp by doing it. So although I could tell the kid, well, make sure you check the floor before you go. Before you go in the window, check the floor and all. But if I'm not checking the floor myself, because I have not been in fires for a long time, it's almost like you're going through the motion, but the urgency isn't there. And I don't want to train somebody to do something wrong. With the tech rescue, the way you can stay current is, well, for example, if I do a trench, I practice trench rescue all the time. Every trench I'm doing is a live trench, the same as if it was the real world. When I'm doing confined space drills, which is a favorite now, wasn't back in the day, now I've embraced it, I enjoy it much more. Some of the rope work, I can make a drill very realistic, exactly like the real world. And I like that, where firefighting, I can't. So that's why I've gravitated towards tech rescue more than firefighting the last 20 years.
So you'll have to excuse me here. I wrote down my my questions here for
Sure.
you. So thank you very much for the background. And you know, it is interesting when you talk about you know, when you leave before you want to.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
But it's great that you've been able to stay involved in the way that you have, not only coming here to Indy every year, but also you know, just staying on the training side of things. Because you know, and we're going to get into your training philosophy in a little bit. But you know, there are always. It's funny. A couple minutes ago, I said, you know, we did things a little bit more manually back then. But then you could also make an argument that those are the basics, and you always have to go back down to those basics, you know, when you're doing it. But before, you know, and I don't want to get into, you know, like, you know, all the gory aspects of everything, but you were in Rescue 1 in the FDNY that's based in Manhattan. A lot of different types. I mean, we've talked about, you know, just over dinner sometimes, some of the interesting incidents that you responded to during your career that, you know, are completely foreign to me, just based on the calling area, you know, that you were in. And we were talking about fires back then. But talk about some of the types. You don't have to get into, I mean, if you want to, hey, you know, go for it, you know, give any examples you want. You don't have to get into each and every one, but talk about some of the responses that you would have made back then that required those technical rescue skills. And then we're going to get into a bit about how things have changed up until today, or maybe how they haven't.
Well, I'm trying to think of an example. Whether I like it or not, sometimes we're known from certain incidents. People get typecast like that's who that guy is, just that. So an example for rope rescue, we have a roof rope rescue evolution that was just performed recently. And they interviewed a young guy, a probie, I think he was, either just off probation or probation. To see Chief Hodgins standing next to the young guy, and I apologize for not knowing his name, but I didn't know this would be a question. It looked like a proud dad watching his son. And the kid was spot on everything he said. I was so proud. And I'm watching it with my dad, who's still alive. We're watching the news clip, and he's so proud. It just was wonderful. So using that evolution that young guy just performed, it's very fast and it's very efficient. But it's just the rope, you know. When I was involved, it's just the rope around the guy. It's a static line. It's not dynamic. There's no pull to it. Rope around the fireman to the guy lowering him. He goes down, picks the victim up, and goes down to the next floor and gets brought back in. Well, it's extremely efficient and extremely fast. Works great in certain circumstances. Out of fire, there's no other choice. But out of fire, where there's no other choice, is actually very rare. Because usually, you know, why was I using the same evolution to try and save a window washer whose scaffolding slipped, or a guy is working on a marquee over a movie theater and he falls and breaks his wrist? The guy can sit there for 5 hours if you have to. Why am I using this evolution that is so fast and efficient, but no second line, no attachment to victim to the rescuer and all? Unless they have changed something from back in the day, that's what it was.
Sure.
So when I was in Rescue 1, we were first starting to go outside the department. And although that evolution was spot on, we realized the need, probably other people had done it too, for other situations. And I don't know if I'm jumping around, Chris.
No, you're good.
But there's also hard to believe, but a lot of firefighters, probably more the men than the women, is the rumor that they have an ego. I haven't seen it myself, brothers and sisters. I'm not saying the firemen have an ego, but I've heard that. The firefighters have an ego. So in FDNY, we were always a very closed shop. You know, we felt that we knew everything. The fact that we were getting a lot of experience in everything doesn't mean there's other tips that we can't pick up from somebody else.
Sure.
So early 90s, working for ROCO, initially started by some retired state troopers from Louisiana, and they had a lot of cops working for them and some firemen. I learned a lot that I had not been exposed to. Later on, Spec Rescue in Virginia Beach, 400-man department. You can't say my department's 10,000 members, they have nothing to show me. It's BS.
Sure.
Went down there, learned a lot. Also, before I was a firefighter, I was a underground lineman for the Long Island Lighting Company. And we were using ropes and pulleys in different ways all along, just not for a human load. So you got to be able to take from other places. Well, they say, take what you need and leave the rest. And again, that applies to this podcast. This stuff is just my opinion, you know, and it doesn't mean I'm right or wrong. It just means that you should listen to everybody, and then you decide and take what works for your target hazards wherever you are, and just ignore what I have to say. It worked for me, but it might not work for the next guy. So it's just my opinion. But yeah, that was a big learning curve for me in the tech rescue. I like to keep things basic and be open to seeing things in other areas. Also, I'm retired from FDNY for a long time. So if I say something, here's what I did back at work, that might have changed since I left FDNY. So don't go by me, ask somebody what's going on at FDNY that's more current there than I am, okay?
As you said, it's been a while
Yes.
since you did, and you just cited some examples about, you know, you just said, you know, like they might be doing it a little differently now, but based
Yes.
on, so you went back, so going back to maybe around the time you started a Spec Rescue, you know, between then, or ROCO, between then and now, what are some of the things that have changed on the technical rescue side in terms of the tactics? Like when you go to teach a class at a department, or they come to you, what are some of the tactics that have changed, if any, and how has the equipment changed?
Tactics or equipment? Tactics are tough to talk about sometimes because, first of all, somebody's target hazard one place might be different than another.
Sure.
FDNY had a tremendous amount of manpower. Since I left FDNY, I'm teaching, so I have as much manpower as I want. I get more students if I need to move something. I ain't moving those whales and panels anymore in a trench. I'm too freaking old. I make a kid do it, you know? So, you know, all kidding aside, Tactics and procedures, I can suggest, depending on how many people you have, what to do. You know, you go down a checklist, you know, monitoring the air, having somebody do this, having somebody do that for a confined space. So is stuff being done simultaneously because you have the manpower, or does it have to be done in order? But you can't break, you know, certain tasks have to be done. A lot of departments will be, it's got to be done in order. I was like, no, it's done simultaneously because I had the manpower. So the classes have to adjust to the students, how they operate, you know. Equipment has changed, and I'm a big proponent of back to basics, but for several reasons. Also, it's what worked for me. Now, I'm probably not the sharpest tool in the shed, so all I can tell you is my gigabytes were maxed out sometimes, and this is what worked for me. Other people, maybe they're sharper, they can do whatever. But rope, let's say, right? So you get into the dynamics and the construction of rope, and you look at this and that. And basically, like we would say, vehicle extrication is a game of angles, where I'm putting the car to the spread. It's all angles on the car. Rope is really a game of friction. So we would always have like the figure eight, which has been around forever. And you could see how the rope went through the figure eight. Then they came out with the figure eight with ears, or the rescue figure eight. So you didn't accidentally make a girth hitch. The rope came around. Most people would understand that. Then, late 80s, early 90s, a rack was new. I don't know what year it came out, but the rappel rack was fairly new. Now you don't even see that. It's like it would be in a museum. And I hate when they say that, because that's reflecting on me. Whatever. But the thing about a rack compared to, let's say, like MPD, you'll watch somebody that's not familiar with an MPD, not struggle. That particular brand, the diagram is inside, where to put the rope in. People look, it's not right there intuitive until they open it up, slide the side plate and do what you got to do, right? It's great. With the rack and the figure eight, you could see it was all friction, like the bars on the rack. When you first are handed a rack and you go to use it with the rope, guys are, you know, you could spread the bars. You're familiar with the rack, right? Okay, I hope everybody is. It has those little bars and ropes going back and forth, back and forth. Sometimes when you first are handed the rack, if you're not familiar with the rope, the people are squeezing the bars together to slow themselves down. They think they're squeezing the rope. They're not. As you're sliding those bars up, you're changing the angle of the rope. It's giving it more surface, more friction. So you could be mistaken to think that I'm squeezing the rope. What I'm actually doing is adding more friction. That's why you can kick a bar off the rack and change how many bars you got on it. The figure eight, you could see the friction as it goes through the eight. You get into the clutch and the MPD and these other devices, which are better, more efficient, easier to use, can do more functions. But your eye is not catching exactly how the friction goes. So you say, well, what's the difference, Kevin? Given a confined space drill out in Billings, Montana. Those guys were dialed in. Billings Fire Department was great. Actually, my friend Matt Hoppel, one of the chiefs, is coming out today. And what I had them do is go down at a water treatment plant, go down a manhole to make a retrieval. But of course, you got to complicate it because that's too simple. They went down, have them on supplied air. So they have the hard line. Add the extra rope. Guys argue, do I need the rope, you know, the belay line? Do I need this? Load them up with the ropes, because the line management is a difficult part of the confined space drill. So I'd rather you had a worse situation during your drill. If you dump a safety line on in the real deal, I'm not watching, you know, do what you got to do. The drill should be harder than real life when you can. That's my philosophy. So OSHA says like 2 points of contact. Well, if 1 point of contact is the ladder, and then 1 point of contact's one rope, I only need one line because I'm not rappelling, you know, free falling. So I get down. A lot of guys would say, well, do I really need this other safety line? I'm on the ground. I don't even debate that. I just put as many lines and air lines and comms lines on them as I can to make it a real pain in the butt so that they're practicing manipulating these lines. Now they went down a tunnel. It was a long tunnel, maybe 50 yards, 40 yards, over these big pipes, over and under them. And what I did was I took a mannequin and I had the line go as if it went down the manhole, about 50 yards over and under big pipes, then back up to a small landing, and then the guy collapsed after he'd gone all the way back up. Bottom line was, couldn't get a tripod there. It was impossible. So what I did to simulate it, because I don't like when you make your simulation too ridiculous, UFO crashes into nuclear power plant. Everybody's heard that BS before. It's like, whatever, like the instructor shows his lack of real world experience by pulling stuff out of his butt, But for a worker to go down, go through this long maze and go up to grease a valve, to maintain something, to take a reading off a meter, very possible. Not only possible, it's happening all over the country all the time. So the rescuer goes down with all his lines on, pain in the butt, goes through this long maze, 50 yards, goes back up a half a flight, and now he's got the mannequin, a heavy 200-pound mannequin. So he's looking, how am I going to lower this guy? It was only about 8 foot, right? So I'm not saying anything, I'm watching him, but the drills should progress positively. I don't have a guy fail. And you could see it. Now he's stressed, it was hot. But I'm like, you got the railing right there. Wrap the railing 4 times. Put him on the rope, lower him down. But when we drill, we're thinking, I gotta have the tripod, I have to do everything perfectly. Where's my device? Where's my MPD? Where's my this? Where's my that? So you don't need anything, man. Wrap that railing a couple times. If 3 is not enough, wrap it a 4th time, whatever. And so I know it sounds silly, but when I'm doing the drills, if I stress the people enough without overdoing it, bring them up to their limit, people don't think. It's got to be rote memory. When something's going wrong, you have to have your basic evolution down, so my gigabytes, the few that are left, are free for the variables. If I have to think of every little step, I'm not going to be able to perform when I'm stressed. So that's one of the reasons I like to bring everything really back down to basics. MPDs, clutches, and all are great, but I wish we would still incorporate racks or other, figure 8s into our drills. I don't see them anymore.
At least
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. I mean, at least for the theory
end
of it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, so that you can go through the friction, the theory of what is happening in the newer device that you can't see because it's all covered up, versus what you can see on the rack or with that figure 8.
That might seem like common sense to a lot of people, and yet I see it missed when the people are stressed.
Well, and that's it too. I often talk about, most of the time, I haven't had a chance on this podcast yet to get into the rescue end of things. Most of the time I'm talking about firefighting and pump.
There's 1,000 rescue guys out here this week. You can get as many opinions, and most of them are going to differ.
Well, I talk about muscle memory, especially like with pump operations. Getting out and one of the chief engineers that trained me early on when I was first getting qualified on our trucks was he said, just come into the firehouse sometime when nobody else is here and just go through the motions. Just go through the motions of what you're going to do once you put the truck in gear to get water out of the truck. And then it just becomes muscle memory after a while. And then I was going to ask you, like, I guess you just said how important it is, but there is a lot of muscle memory to this as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny you bring that up about MPO. And my dad told me a story a long time ago in the Bronx where chief got rattled. I don't know the whole, I don't want to get too particular.
Sure.
But there were jumpers. And I don't want to name the companies or anybody. Long story short, there were some jumpers and the chief's yelling, covering chief yelling at the chauffeur to attend to one of the victims that just jumped. And the chauffeur didn't do it. He said, I'm pumping, somebody else do it. And was just one of those spot things where the chauffeur was very experienced in South Bronx, was burning back in the 70s. And he had his, wits about him the whole time, kept working, and covering guy that maybe, I don't know, I'm not judging it, but lost his composure for a moment and was going to take the chauffeur away from his duties to attend to a guy who just jumped out a window. Well, more jumpers came, and EMS came, everybody else came, but the MPO can't leave what he's doing if he's in the process of putting rigging pumps, So, muscle memory, I guess, experience. And we can't completely compensate for a lack of experience. A lack of experience is a wonderful thing because it means the community is not suffering.
Right.
Who wants to be going to fires all day long? It sounds like fun, but somebody's, suffering terribly, the community. And life is better, smoke detectors, fire prevention, everything is better. Across the board, I would say. In turn, our incidents are less across the board. So we have to drill more, and we have to make our drills as realistic as we can. We have to drill hard, but one of the things I see with tech rescue is somebody can specialize in rope, specialize in confined space, specialize in trench. They get narrow-minded. They're excellent at what they do. They may know more about each one of those individual modalities, disciplines than I do. But although it's less often, because things have calmed down, thank God, you could have a fire. I mean, this would happen in Rescue 1. We had we didn't have a technical rescue per se. It was a vehicle extrication. It was a little bit complicated, but there's no big deal. Structural fire, and then we were diving, all within one night tour.
Oh, geez.
So, am I like some expert Navy SEAL frogman and then some, metallurgist who knows cars? And no, I'm just a firefighter, right? So remember when you're an instructor, if you pick a discipline that you're passionate about, one particular discipline, you should know as much about that discipline as you can to teach your students everything you can. But remember that they may have more than one function, more than one duty, especially some of the volunteer fire departments. They're spread so thin. How much can a guy drill? No, you never know who's coming.
Yeah, so you never know if that ropes guy is going
if he's
to
not
be
there.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm big, like if you're going to use that as an example, remember we were awareness ops technician level.
Yeah.
Then for a while, it seemed to get away from it. It was level 1, level 2. Remember that? And luckily that's gone. I think we're back to awareness ops technician. And those definitions, NFPA will come out with a different standard. They'll vary what you can actually do in each one. But basically you get the idea. You might not need, depending on people are probably throwing stuff at the screen right now. Don't agree with me, whatever. You need 1 or 2 technicians of each discipline if you can in the firehouse, but you need strong operations level training. How many people are going to do a dual track highline in a rope rescue? I used to think it was nonsense to even teach it, but I was wrong. I see when you do teach something like that, all the other rope skills that are involved to make it happen. But I don't even know what a Kootenai carriage costs anymore. People can't afford the equipment to do this. Also, rope in particular is really a perishable skill. If you don't drill it all the time, you're going to get weak, you're going to lose it. In some departments, maybe this will sound, I don't know, counterproductive to FDIC, but maybe your department shouldn't even take on the task. There's no law out there that says every rural fire department has to have a confined space team. Don't do it. Drill on some of the stuff to a point, but don't do it. Once you commit yourself, in my mind, you're that team. You tell the local sheriff, you tell the county, whatever, you could get called for it. You can't say, I don't know how to do it now when you show up. So be careful, don't bite off more than you can chew, I guess I'd say.
Speaking of that kind of thing, though, you were you didn't say it, but you were indicating. I mean, these are high risk, low frequency
Absolutely.
type of things.
Yes.
You have to drill. You have to drill. You have to drill. How do you have any suggestions or how do you maintain the enthusiasm for the training? Because it's going to be a long time. It's probably going to come. I mean, the chances are eventually what you're training for, you will get to use those skills. But, I have heard it. It doesn't happen often, because the guys who are into this are the guys who are into it. It's the guys who are only kind of halfway.
Thank God they're there. You got to be in it. Yes.
Yeah. But how do you help maintain the enthusiasm for the drills? Yes. To keep them going so that they will be ready, because I understand the concept of, oh my God, we're doing this again. Right. And then it's like, but just reinforcing. Look, this is high risk, low frequency.
Yes.
There's going to come a point when these skills that we're drilling on are going to be used somewhere where it's a waiting game sometimes. Yes. But how do you maintain that enthusiasm during the training for the guys who or the men and women who might be thinking like, oh my God, not again. We're doing this.
Yes. Well, two things that you mentioned. How do you stay proficient, but how do you maintain the enthusiasm? And actually, they're two separate things. It's easier, I think, like for me being retired a long time, it's harder for me because what I feel is you have to incorporate these skills into your life. Mm-hmm. They have to be a part of your life. Hence why through all the disciplines, I keep them basic as possible. Because I'm laughing, because I do stupid crap at home all the time. I have a couple of fishing kayaks. I have them rigged. Every month I change how they're rigged, hanging from my barn. Oh, okay. I'm using rope, systems that I don't need. I wouldn't have, whatever. Plus I'm getting older, so it's hard to lift crap. Anyway, I keep doing stuff like that. I have suspended my pet goats from a rope to try and trim their hooves. They hate when I walk out into the barn with a rope in my hand. And I do silly things like that all the time. I think you have to live this stuff for myself. So of course, in the firehouse, you don't have to tie up your goat or suspend your fishing kayak from the roof, from the ceiling, but you have more opportunity to drill. A big way of doing it for me is to overlap my disciplines, overlap my drills. Don't stay in your lane, mix it up. A vehicle, a confined space, a rope, a trench. Pick 2 or 3 disciplines and throw your dummy into a position, your mannequin, that it incorporates more than one discipline. And that's when they have to think. And if they're going to use some rope on the side of a sandy type trench or, more dynamic ground that's moving, where am I going to anchor to? What am I going to do? And then you have to think about, am I going to get a high point? How am I going to get a high point? I think that's the thing, is stick that mannequin, get the 200-pounder, stick that mannequin in the most bizarre positions, and then use the disciplines that you've outlined ahead of your drill to move that mannequin around. That's how I would do it. That's what I do. As far as keeping your enthusiasm, your motivation, dude, if you don't like it, the door swings both ways, man. Get out. I got nothing for you. That's why you signed up to be a firefighter. Do it or don't do it,
Yeah, seriously, if you wanted to join the team, this is what's expected of you. Yeah, but actually, you could actually take that to the leaders on the team.
Yes.
If they don't set the expectations right out of the gate, that it's like, look, you've joined the team. We are going to drill on this. You can, for something like this, when it happens, you have to be on your game. You have to be able to do this. The only way we're going to be able to do that, because it's not like going to fires, although fires are down in most places, but it's not like you just don't have the frequency of doing it where you develop the muscle memory, or you just develop the internal knowledge of just knowing almost what's going to happen before it happens and being able to plan for it. When we get onto the technical rescue stuff, I mean, every trench is going to present a different challenge. Yes. Just like, and even, any low angle or even any high angle rescue is going to have unique challenges every single time. But then you go back to those basics, and the way you go back to those basics is that you've been drilling on them all along, even though you didn't get to use the skills right away.
Right.
And that sometimes is actually, somewhat of the leadership of the special rescue team or something to say, if this is a problem, hey, no problem.
Yes.
Just, okay, I get it. This just isn't for you. But this is what you're going to be expected to do. And it might, I'm sure you guys were running into such unique stuff often enough where it kind of kept it. But for the teams that just don't see it as much. But it's interesting, because I'm as we're talking, I'm thinking of my community.
Yes.
And I'm in a suburb of Philadelphia, but it is older.
Yes.
The infrastructure is older, and we get talking about like technical rescue type of things. We get trees. We get trees in the buildings. Yes. We get trees in the houses. These are massive 100-year-old trees that are coming down and trapping people, and that becomes a very
absolutely.
It becomes a very technical type of rescue. In fact, just recently, I don't know what it's been, but I'm in Pennsylvania. The PA Turnpike there's this one interchange near me, and I've heard. There have been two that have gone off the ramps recently. Just one the other day went 100 feet in the air, down. Now he's down in the ravine next to the off ramp. So I don't know. I got off onto a tangent there. Sorry.
No,
about that,
this is
Kevin,
good. So also if you become more proficient in rope, let's say for one example, you'll use the rope more often. Mm-hmm. So the rope, when people look at ropes, if they're not practicing. My partner in my training company used to say this, John Campbell, he'd say that the rope is not the problem, the rope is the solution. And the new students look at the rope as this is the problem, we have to learn how to do this and that. And he's like, no, man, the rope's the solution, how can it help me? So I go to a rural area, and cars down a slope, down a ravine, whatever you would say, off the road, down. Manpower short, bystanders will stop, want to help often. Some PD will come. They're not trained in exactly what you do. They want to be helpful. Well, let's say I throw a guy in a Stokes, right? I got a couple of guys and girls, my other firefighters lift the Stokes up, and they're trying to come up a hill, a muddy hill, right? Well, would you use ropes? They're like, oh, we're going to have to set up some big complicated system. There's no time. Let's just do this, right? Well, I'll tell you what if I just take the rig to the edge of the ravine, take the bumper, put two pulleys on the front of the bumper, tie a rope or bridle to the top of the Stokes, rope comes up to one pulley, the other pulley, and down. Just take 4 bystanders, say, hey, pick up that rope and walk downhill. And now they still have to hold the Stokes, of course, off the ground, but it's being pulled up for you, up the slope. Boom, rope system.
Sure.
1-to-1, right? Yeah. But why not? If you're not drilling, that may sound stupid or so basic, why even having that on your podcast? If you're not going to the rope as a solution on a regular basis, you're not going to opt for it in places that are that simple. If you're opting for a rope all the time, you'll become more proficient when something more complicated that requires the rope, you'll be ready to perform. That's how I look at that.
Always be thinking.
Yeah.
Always be thinking. Is there getting back to some of we talked about some of the progression of, and we only really referred to one of them, but it was like the rack, the figure 8, and now these other
MPDs, clutches, and what have you. Yes.
Maybe it's one of them, maybe it's not. But do you, in your experience over the, I guess we're getting into 25 years or so, has there been one innovation in that area that you're thinking like, boy, that one really changed things when it came out, and if that it made the techniques easier. It could even be. It doesn't even have to be like a product. The innovation could be. I don't know. We pre-rig our 4-to-1s in my firehouse, and they're in a bag, and it's it's ready to go as soon as we need it. But we all know how to do like a Z-rig using one of those new products that. So like, has there been anything that you can think of that's been like, man, that's really made the rescuer's life easier?
All those devices we named, the MPD, the clutch, absolutely. I just like to keep the basics incorporated with it so people understand the principles behind it, but spot on piece of equipment. The set of fours where you get your 4-to-1 and your progress captures in there. You don't have to have another device or another prosthetic to capture the progress. That's a big one. There's been several. It's all really steps. Like we were saying before we started the podcast, you have to remember when you see a lot of this stuff, this equipment, and again, just my opinion, this is in my mind, we're taking things from industry, industrial stuff, and from the sporting world. And so companies like, Rogless and DBI Solar and all heavy safety equipment. I like it. Spot on, rock solid stuff. But it's not mobile, not flexible. And they'll make you've seen the, not the tripod, but the arm that comes up, high point anchor, on a big, heavy base. It may have rollers on it. You could move it from one manhole or whatever to another, but it's not portable. It's movable, not portable. I can't put it on the rig, right?
Right.
Stuff like that. But I like it. It's super strong, heavy, easy to use. And then we go to the sporting world, ropes and pulleys, names like Rock Exotica, they come in purple and green with polka dots and crap like that. Super lightweight, super high performance. From the rock climbing world, mountaineering world, whatever, right? Well, very flexible, good stuff. A lot of the rock climbers and mountain climbers and all are great at rigging up complicated things, but they're by themselves. They're getting themselves from one place to another and can perform a rescue, but it's not like two guys, two attendants on a little lower, and you got the patient, two more. No. We're looking at a world, we're trying to get the flexibility, the lightweight and high performance of the sporting world with the rock solid, heavy duty of the industrial world, and we have to find a compromise between the both. And that's where I see a lot of the products. When you come here to FDIC, there's a tremendous amount of great ideas, and usually they're not really new ideas. Somebody will say, oh, I heard about that from an old timer. We're thinking of the ideas, but we can't put them in place, right? So every year when you come to a big, huge conference like this, you can see the steps getting closer and closer to manufacturers to where they really nail that sweet spot and have gotten the flexibility and the high performance, but the rock solid and durability of the two worlds come together. And I think that's where our best rescue tools come from. And that's across the board in all the disciplines,
Well, we covered, I think, a lot on the technical rescue, and
yes.
We talked a bit about the equipment and everything. But I also wanted to catch up with you. I haven't seen you in a year.
Yes.
What are you up to? What are you up to these days? You're doing the training, but you've got some other things you're working on as well.
Yes. Trying to stay in the fire service. I miss it so much. Have my small training company, Glacier Rescue Solutions. Most small training companies, we teach all the disciplines, and whatever, if I'm weak in something, I just bring one of my friends in from the East Coast that was strong. You got to stay current. And so basically in almost all these small companies, confined space is what keeps the lights on for a company because industry is required by OSHA to have it, whether it's a standby team, whether it's some training, whether it's a response, I'm not gonna get into every OSHA regulation on permit required or non-permit required, but basically to support a company, confined space is really the only one that's mandatory. Trench work is supposed to be mandatory by OSHA, but companies do it or they don't. They're not getting inspected because it's on the spot, not a factory. It's constantly got permit required entry. So I keep my hand in that. I'm still the rep now for Perimeter Solutions, which is, they make both foam, Phos-Check foam, and they make the retardant. You would say the orange stuff that drops out of planes. We're trying to show people that it can be ground applied because it's preventive measure, it's an extinguishing agent, but also a protective agent, so you can apply it ahead of time. We're getting all that WUI, they call it, the wildland urban interface. The losses, mostly in Northern California, have been devastating. So they've got me on that for now, and I've been doing some work back in FDNY, going back to do some consulting every other month for a week.
Oh, sweet.
And that's where my heart is. I miss FDNY terribly, terribly.
All right, well, that's
it. Yeah.
Cool deal.
And you guys still put up with me. It's like over 20
Well,
years.
it's only 1 year now. It's only once a year, so, you know.
This is a very important job. Not everybody can get those signs straight for the classroom. And when I fill the water pitcher, that water is cold, ready to be drank. Right there.
Well, let me tell you,
I'm the
there's a lot
guy
of people
putting out signs and filling water pitchers. This dude.
If we don't get the signs up, nobody's going to know where
That's
to
right,
go
brother.
for these
That's
classes.
right.
So,
very important.
well, Kevin, I want to thank you very much for sitting down
Yes.
with me. I know you've got a lot of signs to organize right now. So you got to get your team together and get them started on some things. It's funny, you know. Every year that I come here, I'm amazed at. Looking at what the trade show floor looks like now, because that's where, you know, I mean, for fire apparatus and emergency equipment, I'm out there. That's, you know, David Rhodes has the training side, you know, and that, you know, that's his Super Bowl. That the show floor out there when those exhibits start, though.
Yes.
That's my Super Bowl. So, but it's always amazing looking at it now. We're 2 days before the training is starting right now.
It's nice and quiet right now.
It's very quiet,
Not much
but
longer.
I mean, like I'm watching people. They're in there. They're putting tape down on the floor to indicate where all the booths are. I mean, like there are some real unsung FDIC heroes in there that are getting all those things right. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they.
The contractors here and the union people from this stadium in this convention hall, they'll change from topic to topic. You have no idea.
Yeah, I know.
You'll walk in here in a couple of days, you'll think this whole building is nothing but the fire department always was.
Yep.
The displays look permanent. It's even like the tread of each step has got a label all over the whole place. In 2 weeks, it'll be like a Lego convention.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't even know that the fire department was even here. These people work very hard. They're
It is.
amazing.
It's
Yes.
amazing. It's amazing.
Well, thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you for sitting down with me. I'm glad we had a chance to do this. We got a whole
Yes.
week, though, to catch up on some other
Yes.
things, too. So
Yes.
I'm looking forward to that. I always look forward to seeing you every year. So, again, this has been Chris McClune with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment, sitting down with Kevin Shea. We talked technical rescue stuff today. If there are topics that we haven't hit on with this podcast yet, I've said it before, but I'll say it again. Let me know. Chris.McClune at... boy, I'm brain farts.
That's okay.
You got to get them out before the week starts. Chris.McClune at ClarionEvents.com. Also, if you go to fireapparatusmagazine.com/podcast, you get a chance to see all the podcasts that we've done to this point. So again, please let us know. Part of what is enjoyable for me, whether it's podcasts or webcasts, is our communication with you, the audience, and you know anything we can do. We've got subject matter experts. I'm going to meet, you know, probably 200 of them this week.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, we have plenty of people to get those questions answered. So again, Chris McClune with Fire Apparatus and Equipment, sitting down with Kevin Shea. Have a good one and stay safe. And thanks again,
Yes,
Kevin.
thank you. Thank you, everyone.
In the world of firefighting and public safety, reliability is key. That's why for over 2 decades, first responders nationwide have trusted the Fire Store as their go-to source for essential equipment, apparel, and accessories. From top-of-the-line firefighting gear like helmets, boots, and thermal imaging cameras, the Fire Store has it all, tailored to the specific needs of our heroes on the front lines. But they don't stop there. Their extensive selection also includes EMS supplies, safety apparel like flame-resistant clothing and high-visibility gear, as well as a wide array of tools, from hand tools to vehicle extrication tools, supporting public safety professionals in their duties. Partnered with industry leaders, the Fire Store's commitment to quality and excellence is unmatched, because when it comes to protecting communities, there's no room for compromise. Join the thousands of first responders who rely on the Fire Store. Visit thefirestore.com online or in-store today. The Fire Store, your reliable partner for fire and public